You're listening to FinTree's CommuterNotes, helping you study when you can't.
Hello there, this is Utkarsh Jain with FinTree CommuterNotes. I have here with me Aarti and Akshata, and the topic that we would be discussing today is capital budgeting. So let me start with the first question, Aarti, for you. What do you understand by the capital budgeting process?
Okay, so capital budgeting is basically a process of identification and evaluation of the capital projects. So we're given a project and there are certain steps which we have to follow, and we have to see whether the project is suitable for us to accept or reject. That
means capital budgeting is about deciding whether a particular business project is to be taken. Okay, makes sense. Next question. In this learning outcome, they have discussed those steps, if you remember, Akshata. What steps we follow for capital budgeting?
So basically, there are many steps, but the main 4 steps, those are, first is idea generation.
Okay.
The second one is analyzing project proposals.
Okay.
The third one would be to create a firm-wide capital budget.
Right.
And the fourth one is monitoring decisions and conducting a post-audit, like a follow-up.
Okay. Makes sense. So what is this post-audit?
So basically post-audit, it should be used to identify any systematic errors in the forecasting process and to improve the company's operations.
Okay. Yeah, so basically to check whether the forecasting at the time of evaluation was okay or whether it went wrong. Alright. And Aarti, then they have some discussion on categories of capital budgeting projects. Okay, so do you remember any of them?
Yes, sir. So starting with, we have the replacement projects. So we could have replacement projects to maintain a particular business. Then if somebody wants to reduce their cost, it could be for cost reduction. Somebody wants to expand their business, it could be for expansion, or it could even be to enter into a new product or to enter into a new market. So therefore, market development and a new product development.
Okay. All right. So basically capital budgeting is to take different types of decisions. I think I'm just going to reread the topics that we discussed. Replacement project to maintain the existing business. Now at level 1, they don't have much of stuff on this, but at level 2, you actually have to do numericals on each one of them. Then there is replacement project for cost reduction. So it could be something like you're in a car leasing business and currently you're using a car which is inefficient, fuel inefficient. So you replace that with a newer, smarter version. Then expansion, setting up, expanding your business or doing new development type of market development projects. And finally, you said what? Mandatory government projects. Okay. The next, they have this very important learning outcome on principles of capital budgeting. Okay. Now, there are 5 of them. We will have discussion on each one of them one by one. But for the first one, I'm going to make a statement and you have to correct me if I go wrong. That the capital budgeting decisions are taken based on the cash flows, not profit.
Yes, sir, that's correct. But the cash flows that are taken are on after-tax basis.
Yes. Yeah. So which means we don't worry about profit in capital budgeting. We focus purely on cash flows. All right. Then second, there is this discussion on sunk cost.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what sunk costs are?
So basically, sunk costs are costs which are incurred even if you take the undertake the project or no. So if you've paid for market research and then you come up to a conclusion that the project is not suitable for you.
Okay.
But that sunk cost is anyways incurred.
But if the project was suitable?
Then also it is
then it is a sunk cost.
Even then it is.
Okay. Aarti, have you enrolled for level 1 exams?
Yes, sir.
You've paid the fees?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's the sunk cost. Now? Okay, then next. So should we consider the sunk cost in capital budgeting decisions?
No, sir.
No, we don't.
No.
Okay. And then there is discussion on externalities. Okay, so they've said there are positive and negative ones. So can you give me some example? Can you think of any externality?
So talking about negative externalities, supposing take Coke. Take Coke and Diet Coke. Both of them are competitors and they belong to the same company. But you either take Coke or then you take Diet Coke. You can't take both of it together. So the sales of Coke would definitely overpower the sales of Diet Coke.
It will be a fake. Okay.
So therefore, it would be a negative.
So we call this as cannibalization, where you introduce a new product and it kills the sales of the existing product to some extent. Okay, makes sense. And then should we consider this externality while taking capital budgeting decision?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we have to, right? So when companies, they launch new products, they also try to gauge the impact of what it will have on the existing level of sales. All right, moving on then. Now there is this discussion on conventional cash flows versus unconventional cash flow. Okay, so Akshada, what are unconventional cash flows?
So I'll just start with conventional cash flows. So basically, conventional cash flow is when the cash flow pattern, it changes sign only once. So basically at first you will have an outflow, which is a negative sign. And then over a period of time, you'll get inflows, which is a positive sign.
Right. That's how it works generally in the business, right?
But in case of unconventional cash flows, the signs will change more than once.
Okay. So you're saying initially there would be an outflow and maybe inflow for some years and then there would be outflow again.
Yeah. Or
so
like
plus,
a negative
minus,
cash
minus.
flow. Yes.
Okay. So then can we say that when the sign changes more than once, it is an unconventional cash flow pattern?
Yes, sir.
Correct. Okay. Now, I have seen many projects in real world scenario where the cash flows turned out to be unconventional. Right. So you start doing some project and then after the second year, there is an additional leg of capex to be done. Or after the third year, there's a leg of capex to be done. So, which means we will have to figure out some way of dealing with these unconventional cash flows. Okay, moving on. Then there is this second principle of capital budgeting, which says we should consider opportunity cost. Okay, so what does it mean?
So opportunity costs are usually referred to as costs which are foregone. For example, if a company has 100 million and they wish to undertake a project A, so they put all the 100 million into the project A. So that amount that they've used to start to go ahead with the project, that is the opportunity cost, which is the cost foregone. They could have used the 100 million in something else.
Yeah, okay. So you're saying basically you invest your own money into a business. Alternatively, you could have earned some interest on that. So that's opportunity cost. Or maybe even better, let's say you're currently salaried employee. You quit your job and you start doing business. So the salary foregone would be your opportunity cost. And then should that be considered while taking decisions?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on then, the third principle, it talks about the timing of the cash flows and it says you should be factoring in, which of course makes sense because we have to consider the time value of money, right? And then the fourth one says that consider cash flows on after-tax basis because of course tax we know is a cash outflow. The fifth one is an interesting. I'm going to make a statement. You have to correct me if I go wrong on this. Interest expense should be considered while calculating cash flows for capital budgeting purpose.
So it is wrong because that will be like double counting because in the WACC, WACC is basically the discount rate that you will be using to find the present value of the cash flows.
Okay.
So in that we are already taking into consideration the cost of debt.
Right.
The interest. So if you're again using the financing cost, it'll be like you're double counting it.
So are you saying that all the financing cash flows should be ignored while doing capital budgeting decisions?
Yes.
Okay, which means, let us say I'm doing some business and in the first year I receive a cash flow of 100. Okay, now out of that I pay 20 to the bank in the form of interest. So I'm left with 80. So you're saying in real life, in your pocket you will have 80, but for capital budgeting decisions you will show that as 100. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Yes, she's right. We will show 100 because that 20 will get captured when you discount the cash flows at WACC, weighted average cost of capital. Perfect. So for the exam, no matter what, we have to remember this point that financing costs are to be ignored while doing the cash flows for capital budgeting.
Hi, I'm Amita Metkari. I've completed my master's from University of Massachusetts in mechanical engineering and now plan to appear for CFA level 1 exam. In this process, guidance from FinTree has been very helpful. The platform provided by FinTree is very cogent and concise. The videos are a great help to know and master the concepts. Learning process would not have been so easier if it wasn't for FinTree. Thank you.
Moving on next, Aarti, they have discussion on independent versus mutually exclusive projects. Okay, so what are independent projects?
So, independent projects are those which can be chosen in respective of the other. For example, we have project A and project B. So, I can choose either of the projects, or I can choose both the projects.
So they have nothing to do with each other, is what you're saying. And mutually exclusive would be?
Mutually exclusive is like if you have two projects again, like she said, A and B. But so I can choose only one.
You can
A
choose
or B.
So you're saying for a mutually exclusive project, you cannot have both. You can just choose one of them.
Either.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, that's right. Next one now is about the project sequencing. There's this learning outcome which discusses about project sequencing, and it's fairly straightforward. What it says is, at times it is quite possible that in order to be able to do project B, you might have to do project A in advance. Right? So that is kind of considered as a project sequencing. Then there is discussion on capital rationing, Aarti, if you remember anything from it.
So capital rationing is all about priorities. So you're prioritizing all your projects that you have.
Okay.
You have project A, project B, project C, and project B would be the most advantageous to you, and followed by project A and project C. So you would first go in for project B, and then for project A, and then for project C.
So you're saying you should try to maximize your profit within the limited capital budget. So that's capital rationing. And then I think the main learning outcome, they have those 5 methods that they've discussed for capital budgeting. First one is net present value, NPV, then internal rate of return, IRR, payback period, discounted payback period, and profitability index. Let us start with NPV. What would be the formula?
The present value of inflow minus the present value of outflow.
Inflows minus outflows.
Outflows, yes.
And we should accept the project when NPV is
High, positive.
NPV is positive. So if there are independent projects, so let's say we have project A, B, C. Project A has an NPV of 500, B of 1000, C of 1500. Which one should we take?
Project C, because it has the highest NPV.
Okay. So in this scenario, we will take all the 3. Because they're independent projects, the simple rule is that you select all the projects which have positive NPV. If they are mutually exclusive, then we will select project C, which will have highest NPV. So the decision rule, select if it's positive for independent, and for mutually exclusive, select the one with
The
highest NPV. Okay, now this one is an important one. I'm going to make a statement. You have to correct me if I go wrong on this. NPV method implicitly assumes that cash flows are reinvested at the discount rate.
Correct, sir.
Is it correct?
Yes.
And remember this for the exam because they try to play around. We will see IRR method as well going forward. IRR method assumes that cash flows will be reinvested at
The
IRR itself. So NPV assumes cash flows are reinvested at discount rate. IRR assumes cash flows are reinvested at IRR itself. Okay, moving on. So I think we are through with NPV. Next one is IRR, internal rate of return. Again, I'm making a statement. Listen to this. IRR is that rate at which present value of inflows will become same as present value of outflows.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
IRR is that rate at which NPV of the project becomes 0.
Yes.
Correct? But the most meaningful interpretation of IRR, it is the rate that you actually earn on a project.
Yes.
Agree?
Yes.
Now, while selecting projects, can I say accept the project when IRR is more than cost of capital?
Yes.
Yes. Because when IRR is more than cost of capital, then automatically NPV of that project is going to be positive because you're earning more than your cost of capital here. Now there are certain disadvantages of IRR as a number. So do you remember any of them?
So first, as you mentioned already, that it is reinvested at the IRR.
IRR assumes that cash flows get reinvested at IRR.
Which I don't think is very much logical because it is not so in the real life situation.
Correct, because you might have projects with, let us say, IRR of 50%, but you would not be able to reinvest your cash flows at 50% again in the market. And that is the reason why we calculate a number, not in the syllabus, but we calculate a number called modified IRR, where we relax the reinvestment assumptions.
Yes.
Okay, what next?
So the next one is basically, as we discussed before, about the unconventional cash flows. In case of unconventional cash flows, IRR has an issue that there might be no IRR or there might be multiple IRRs.
Correct. So if the cash flows are unconventional, we might have no IRR or multiple IRR. What else?
So it can't be used in isolation. That means whenever we have to use IRR, we also have to take into consideration the cost of capital and we have to compare it with the cost of capital.
Correct. Yeah, so if there are two projects and if one of them has a higher NPV, we can simply select it only by looking at NPV. But if there are two projects and one of them has a higher IRR, we cannot select it because that IRR still needs to be compared with cost of capital before taking the decision. Okay, so that makes sense. Moving forward now we have payback period, which is simply time taken to recover your initial cash flows. And discounted payback period
takes into consideration the
same concept, but it considers
present value.
Time value of money. It takes present value. Now, can I say this? That discounted payback will always be lesser than simple payback period?
No, sir.
No?
It's the opposite.
Yes. Discounted payback will always be higher than the payback period because you're reducing cash flows by taking time value of money or discounting. Alright. Now this is something I want you to remember. This sentence, which is directly testable, payback period and discounted payback period, they are a poor measure of profitability of the company, but they might be a good measure of liquidity. Okay, what it means is, think of a project. You invest 500 in year 1. Year 0 you invest 500. Year 1 you get 300. Year 2 you get 200. So what is the payback period?
2 years.
2 years. Now in year 3, we don't even know what cash flow we're getting. We are not considering that. Maybe in year 3 we'll get 10,000. Right? But it does not consider the cash flow that we receive after the payback period. And that's the big disadvantage. And therefore the important sentence, remember it, that payback period and discounted payback period, they are a poor measure of profitability. Okay. However, they could be a good measure of liquidity because they tell you how quickly you're recovering your cash. Moving forward then, the next concept is profitability index. Okay. So, Aarti, you remember the formula?
Yes, sir. Present value of inflows upon present value of outflows.
Present value of inflows by outflows. And can I say this, that those projects will have positive NPV, will have profitability index greater than 1?
Yes.
Or greater than 0?
Greater than
1.
Greater than 1. Because inflows and outflows, when they are same, NPV is 0. So when NPV is 0, PI is 1. But when NPV is positive, PI would be greater than 1. Then towards the end of the reading, there is discussion on Npv profile. What is Npv profile?
So basically Npv profile, it's a graphical representation which shows the project's NPV at different discount rates.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you have on x-axis?
X-axis would have IRR.
No, we don't have IRR on x-axis. On x-axis, we will have cost of capital.
Okay.
Or different discount rates. On y-axis, we will have
undiscounted cash flow.
No. On y-axis, we will have NPV.
Okay.
Alright, now listen to this carefully. Y-axis will have NPV. X-axis will have discount rates. Okay, and it would be a downward sloping graph. The y-axis intercept. Y-axis intercept. The point where the NPV profile intersects y-axis Of course, that is the point at which your cost of capital is 0. Correct? Because you're on 0 coordinate. 0 coordinate. So therefore, you will say that y-axis intercept is the total of undiscounted cash flows. X-axis intercept is the point where NPV gets 0. And therefore, x-axis intercept is your IRR. Okay, so I'm repeating this again. It's a downward sloping graph. On y-axis, we have NPV. On x-axis, we have cost of capital. Y-axis intercept is total of undiscounted cash flows. X-axis intercept is IRR. And then what is the crossover rate?
So basically the crossover rate is the rate at which the two projects have the same NPV.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you will basically plot two Npv profiles on the same graph, and the point at which they will intersect, that is the point at which would be called as the crossover rate. Now there could be a numerical on the exam to solve crossover rate. Okay, so how do we do it? If you've been given cash flows of two projects, you take the difference of those cash flows. Okay, and then for the difference of those cash flows, you calculate IRR, and that IRR of the difference of the cash flows would be considered as crossover rate. Alright, so that's it. I hope you're enjoying these audio notes. So you'd get to listen this again in the next set of notes. Thank you very much.